Hello, everybody. It's 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to call to order the January 21st meeting of the Design Review Board. And we have a new member. Lisa Sorensen is joining us. So I just want to say hello. Glad you're here. We'll start with introductions, starting with Rick.
Rick Blackburn, Historic Zoning Commission.
Lisa Sear Burnett, Business Development Representative.
Perry Childress, East Tennessee Community Design Center.
Sarah Martin, Urban Design Representative.
There's a person with some things coming out of their mouth on the thing. Oh, push in that stock of the thing. Sometimes it comes out. Push that thing down.
Is that good?
Yep.
Now you can hear me. Okay. Lisa Sorensen, Downtown Knoxville Alliance.
Tony Allen, Downtown Development Rep.
Jared Worsham, Downtown Resident Representative.
Suzanne Taravella, Neighborhood Representative.
Dallas DeArmond, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Mike Reynolds, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Melinda Woolert, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Samuel Huck, also with Planning.
Christina McGraw, Tillery, City of Knoxville Law Department.
Mark Reel, City of Knoxville Plans Review and Inspections.
Thanks, everybody. From there, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. They should be in your packet. And once everybody's had a chance to scan over those, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. At this time, I just want to bring up some new business. There's one addition that we have the option of reviewing today that didn't make it into the packet, but all of the other necessary information has been included and the public notice has been done. It just didn't make it into the packet. So if we want to, and it's for a sign. So we'd like to add that as number 3 on the list, which is IE26DT, or sorry, 1E26DT. And we'll need a motion, a second, and a vote to add that to the agenda if we choose to do that.
I don't see any issue with that. I'll make a motion to add IE26DT to our agenda.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll add that one to the list, and it's going to show up as number 3 on the list. Okay, from there, we will start with staff report.
Since the last meeting, we had one level 1 COA within infill housing. This was renewing a previously issued COA for an accessory dwelling unit at the rear of the property.
All right, is there anything else to discuss with that? We can move on to certificates of appropriateness. The first one is 507 South Gay Street, and that is case 1A26DT.
Okay, so this is at the NBC Suites building. It's a proposal to install a new doorway through the facade to the Union Avenue elevation. It is adjacent to their hotel entrance, so it's just to the left of that entrance. What they'll do is cut the marble that's there now as for the bulkhead, leave two parts of that on either side of the door, slide in the door, so there'll be 2 side lights. Actually, I believe the 2 narrow windows that are existing will remain, and they'll slide a door right into that space. And if you go to the next, again, so this is just another view of it. They have above the door is just an aluminum brake metal infill panel, just pretty small, should look like the rest of the storefront system. And again, this is just another view. You can see on the to the right of the main entrance, the Wake storefront. That was another storefront that was added through previously enclosed part of that storefront or elevation. So this won't be too much different from that. Staff recommendation is to approve as submitted. And I'll be happy to answer your questions. I'm not sure if the applicant is here or not, but it's a pretty straightforward request.
Does anybody else know if the applicant's present online or anything?
What's the name? Stevens. There's a Stevens online.
I think it's Thomas.
Okay. Well, we can discuss this one. I think this is a pretty good example of when we talk about having an urban building compatible for commercial in the future, when we say that. This is kind of a good example of that. Is there anything to discuss? Does anybody have any concerns?
The only question I have is if you look at the wake side of things, it has that sign on it, and Mike, this wouldn't include this. Do we know if there would be a sign?
They don't have any signs with this package. If they propose signage, there's some signage that staff can approve. They haven't proposed any yet. If it's something that has to come back to the board, we'll bring it back.
Okay.
What is the purpose of it? Are they adding retail space, or is it just another entrance to the
They-
hotel lobby?
No, it's not necessarily an
Pastry?
interest of. Yeah, it's kind of like a bakery. Yeah.
I don't see any issues with this. I think I agree with Suzanne. I think it's a great example of architecture that has bays that can be adapted over time. And so I would motion to approve as per staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one passes. Thank you. Next up, we'll move on to 424 Southgate Street, which is case 1B26DT.
This request is to revise the halolit wall sign that the board approved for Woodruff's Building in October last year. The size of the black aluminum channel letters remains the same as the previous application. The applicant is proposing to include a Baker panel for the channel letters, which would reduce the number of wall penetrations. The panel will be painted to match the building's exterior paint and will be attached to the signboard with 4-inch anchors at 30-inch intervals. As we mentioned in the previous meeting, the Woodruff's Building is a contributing structure to the Gay Street Commercial Historic District, so the historic resource section of the guidelines will apply. Consistent with the guidelines, the proposed 69 square feet sign is below second-story windows on the signboard, and in staff's opinion is proportional to the building where it will be installed. Although the guidelines discourage internally illuminated signs, halo illumination may be considered as a form of external illumination since the light source do not shine through the sign face. Staff recommends approval of Certificate 1B26DT subject to the same condition as the previous approval, that the sign shall be placed centrally, maintaining equal distance from both sides of the signboard.
Okay, thank you for that. Is the applicant present on this one?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Do you have anything to add to Samuel's comments?
I think he pretty much covered it unless you all have some questions.
Great, thank you. We'll open it up for discussion.
It looks like the exact same sign that's there, only backlit. Is that pretty much it? Same font, same size, same location? So it's virtually no change.
Yes, that is correct. And the signed letters were already approved. When we went down there to do the survey to try to individually mount these, it was going to be extremely difficult and cause a lot of damage to the inside of the building. So really the only reason we're back is to add this backer panel, which will allow us to avoid having to penetrate all the way through that wall.
Great, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask. Can you give us your name and address, please?
Yes, Baker Jones, 2313 Red Cove Road, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Thank you. Okay, so we have the same sign with a different mounting strategy and a backboard.
Is the intention that the backboard be the same color as the brick, or will it be slightly different?
We're going to try to match it the best we can. There is variations color on that brick, but we are certainly going to paint the backer panel matte finish and try to match it the best we can.
And then how deep is that backer panel? I didn't see it on there.
It is only going to be, I think it's 1.5 inches.
Okay, it's fairly minimal.
And are the edges painted the same color as the front?
They are.
Okay. All right, if there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
I would move to approve per staff recommendation. Looks like it's, alterations are being kind to the building.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Next up, we're going to do 1E26DT. Samuel, do you have comments on this one?
I do.
Oh,
I'll
okay,
run
sorry.
through this one. Again, sorry everybody for the last minute addition to the agenda on this, and I appreciate everybody willing to discuss it real quick. This is another sign, but this is for Stockyard Lofts, and it's a bit of a unique situation. So this is a detached sign of sorts. You can go on to the next. There you go. This kind of shows where it'd be located. Next to Barley's, if you're familiar with Stockyard Lofts project, they have a parking lot that extends out to Jackson Avenue next to Barley's. And they would like to have some signage that kind of shows that it's what the parking is for. This sign is 5 feet wide. So talking about the top part of the sign, the main part of the sign is 5 feet wide and 2 foot 4 inches tall. It's a little less than 12 square feet. The base of the sign is 1 foot 6 inches wide by 4 inches deep. The total height of the sign is 6 feet. So the guidelines do not recommend detached signs like this in the warehouse districts. It's in the warehouse sub-district. The only sub-district that does is the Boulevard district, where you typically have a larger yard space for buildings. So that's why this one is coming to the board, and since the guidelines don't recommend them here. The board can still consider them. That just means that the guidelines didn't recognize this sign type. So there's a couple of, you can look at this as a traditional detached sign, which is like a monument sign. There's other types of signage in the sign code called like informational signs or directional signs. Informational signs, I guess you can kind of consider this that, but you think about going to like a large shopping center and you see those signs that say like, hey, this door that way, that store this way, that kind of thing. That's more of an informational sign. It's telling you information about where you're going. This is a bit more of what we could call a directional sign, where it's really just trying to tell you where their entrance is. And there's some nuances to it. Informational signs can be a little bit taller, about 6 feet, 6 feet tall, 12 square feet in area. So that's kind of like where this one is. Directional signs are about 42 inches tall and 9 square feet, if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, sounds like I'm right. So really what we need is the board to discuss whether the size that's, the type of sign is appropriate here and whether or not the size that's requested is appropriate. The staff recommendation is basically to approve the sign after you discuss whether you find the sign to be pedestrian scale and that it will not detract from the broader public realm. As long as you don't feel that way, then you can approve it, or you can approve some kind of modification to it. 6 feet tall seems a little bit big to me, as just from a pedestrian scale level. The directional sign standard seems to be maybe a bit more appropriate for what we're talking about here. Directional signs, can have the business name and logo, but only can have words like parking, entrance, exit, like those types of things on the sign. So that's kind of a little bit of a nuance. They're kind of combining the two ideas here No, they don't have to strictly stay within those. The board can approve whatever they want to. They could propose a 12-foot tall sign here, and y'all could approve it if you think it's appropriate. Just trying to give you context to the types of signs that we typically see and kind of what they're proposing and what kind of how it fits within standard signage regulations.
Thanks, Mike. Is the applicant present for this one? Same person?
Yes, this is Baker Jones at 2313 Craig Cove Road.
Great, thank you. Do you have anything to add to Mike's comments?
I do. So my customer reached out to me about this sign, and it serves two purposes. The main purpose is he's having an issue with people cutting through here, not even knowing that it's part of their property. And so they're turning in off of Jackson and just using it as a cut through. And really it's supposed to be for his customers, the people that live there. And I am meeting where I've got that sign drawn there is going to be 10 feet off of the front property line. That's kind of why I added a little bit of height to that, just cause so cars can see that. And then, the other purpose is slightly advertising for people walking by pedestrians, so they see that and realize that that's also the entrance to the Stockyard Loft. So that's all I have. If y'all have any questions.
Okay, thank you. We'll open it up to the board for discussion.
Will you go back to that last picture? I think in comparison to all the utility poles in that picture, that sign doesn't give me any heartburn at all.
I was going to say that that's a real cluttered up spot.
I will say though, I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't feel like that's to scale properly. Because if you think about the height of a stop sign there on the right-hand side, I think that might be smaller. The one question I did have is if you're looking at it where it would be situated 10 feet back from the sidewalk, is that in alignment with that kind of utility pole there? Or the stop sign? I guess I'm just trying to get a visual of how far back 10 feet from the sidewalk is.
Yes, so that sign is sitting back. It's kind of back behind the stop sign. And it's actually in that picture, it's in the foreground quite a bit. Like if you look at that KGIS map that I scanned in, that kind of shows you the location of the approximate location of where it would be. And like you all said, it is very cluttered in that area right there. And so I tried to find a spot, and I'll obviously have to call one call and make sure there's no utilities before we dig there. But where I have that should be to scale. I put a tape measure down at 2 feet. My artist scaled it based off of that. So it made us be looking like that because it's in the background.
Is there's the pad that is in the photo there on the right-hand side. If you look at the KGIS view, it looks like it's sitting on the edge of the pad versus in this photo. Can we go back to the KGIS real quick? Yeah, it looks like in the KGIS it's next to the that kind of block pad.
Oh,
It's going to be in front of that pad. It's going to be I have to be 5 feet off of that side property line. So it's going to be roughly 5 feet off the side property line, further away from those utility poles, kind of centered in that island area. Is where we envisioned it, just in front of the pad on the Jackson Avenue side.
And it's not illuminated, is that right?
Correct. It's not illuminated. And the letters will be dimensional. They'll be 1/2-inch acrylic.
I also noticed, I'm looking at the street view on my phone, and it looks like there's a fire hydrant there. Do you know if the utility goes across your sign site, or does it go straight out to the road?
I do not know that.
Okay.
I'll have to call and have everything marked in that area.
Yeah, okay.
I think the other thing, and I don't know if this is something to consider or not, and maybe somebody on planning would be able to best answer this, but this Jackson Avenue streetscape project, will that bury those utility lines that are down there, or do we know that?
I don't know that. I'm not sure, unfortunately. I will say that, so I think the utility pole is close to 10 feet away from the front property line. And there's also a provision in the sign code that says directional or informational signs may be allowed closer to the minimum setback from the right-of-way or pavement with approval from city engineering. So there's an option that that the sign could be closer than 10 feet. And, you know, I can't give you an answer to that, though, today. We don't have a representative for city engineering. We haven't discussed that with them. But a smaller sign closer might be more effective than a larger sign further away.
Personally, yeah, I think I would be more on board with a smaller sign closer to than the. I mean, I'm 5'10", I think. So just imagining a 6 foot 2 inch sign seems a bit, or 6 foot 4 inches. I don't know. That seems a bit excessive to me.
Well, and I just think that it would be more effective if it were closer to that turn-in point and not set back behind the utility pole.
I have a question too. Is it going to be double-sided? Is it?
Yes, it is double-sided.
It is, okay.
So, Michael, clarify what they would need to do to move it closer within the 10-foot setback.
I'm not sure, Mark, if you have any experience with that process.
It would be reviewed during plans review. Engineering would look at it to make sure it doesn't affect any sight lines. And then they'll look for any utility obstructions.
Is there a general height or size that you see with that when it's more kind of informational, like you're saying?
Well, it's the 42 inches tall is the maximum for what was
Okay.
defined as a directional.
Okay, so 42 inches.
I agree with Jared and Mike. I think it is too tall and maybe even too wide. I also agree the rendering looks out of scale. I mean, if the window back there is 3 or 4 feet wide, it seems, it seems too small in the rendering. I would be inclined to say stick to the directional signage zoning requirements for this one. Given that it's a pretty large island, they can place it in a way that you can see it from both directions fairly easily. I know that there's that one spot with the pole and the stop sign, but it seems like given that there's space to move it around, I think it makes sense to stick to a smaller sign.
Would it be effective for us to say that we stick to the smaller sign requirements and can authorize it to be closer to the road within city engineering approval?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
If anybody wanted to make a motion, you could include that.
I can try. I would make a motion to approve a 42
42-inch tall sign, and if you want to stick to the sign size, it was 9 square feet maximum.
Yeah. So a 42-inch tall, 9 feet square maximum sign to be approved through city engineering, or
With the location to be approved by city engineering.
with the location to be approved by city engineering.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that smaller size is approved.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to 137 South Central Street, which is case 1C26DT.
Okay, I'm just going to give as brief of a presentation as I can. I know this project was discussed as part of a workshop. I know not everybody was there, but the brief summary. I'm going to touch on a few other high points for your discussion. But it's a 7-story hotel with vehicular access to the rear drop-off area from State Street. No on-site parking is being provided. There's an indoor and outdoor rooftop bar open to the general public, is my understanding. So one thing that we're going to have to discuss is modifications that are being requested. The board has some authority to approve dimensional standards that are part of the base zoning district, which in this case is the downtown Knoxville grid district, that has a that zone has a build-to zone of 0 to 5 feet, which means a certain part of the building has to be within that zone. In this case, it's 80% of the width of the building has to be within that zone. That applies to all 3 street frontages, so Central, Summit, and State Street. The request is for the Central Street build-to zone to be increased to 9.4 feet. Can't speak. 9.4 feet. Summit Hill Drive, 8.5 feet, and then State Street, 32 feet. And again, I'm just put this slide in here just so we have something to come back to that's a bigger image than the first one provided, but this is rendering in the new version that you got. It was uploaded earlier today. These renderings match the elevations now. This is obviously the intersection of Summit and Central. This is looking on Summit at State Street, so you're kind of looking at the back side of the building a little bit and the Summit Hill side. I put this image in here because we don't have a rendering that shows the Central Street side. So if you're at, like, say, Jackson Avenue, looking back to the building, this is the side that you would see. But just know that there's buildings that are 2 stories tall, next to this, so you're not going to see the bottom part of this building. You're going to see, the top 5-ish floors. Just real quick again, so location-wise, this is a pretty prominent spot. You see it from a lot of locations. Sorry, the map is kind of hard to see on the projector and the screen, but being at the intersection of Summit Hill and Central, you really do see it from a lot of locations. Everywhere from James White Parkway to Summit Hill, Central, Gay Street. I'm sure there's visual points from there too, and the other parts of State Street, especially on the southern side. So it's a pretty prominent location. Everybody, I put these images in here just so we can refer back to them if we need to. You can see what was here. It's now gone. It is a vacant site now. Again, there's another street image. You can see the 2-story building to the right. And that streetscape's a little bit different now, too. And again, so this is the State Street and Summit Hill intersection. Unfortunately, it looks like the large tree in the streetscape will not be able to be retained, most likely. They'll work with City Urban Forestry to remediate that. So it was part of the process. And during the workshop, we mentioned it'd be great if they could keep it. Unfortunately, it looks like they probably won't be able to. Just want to note that. Going to the site plan, I just put a little bit of color on here to help visually see it, especially the setback. So if you look at the right side, the Central Street side, you can see where the sidewalk is. Just to the sidewalk is the front property line. And then there's the darker gray areas are the access points. So pedestrian, and then there's the service access, which goes to the middle of the site. And then obviously the green is the landscaping. So you see there's a pretty healthy landscaped area between the sidewalk and the building itself. Pretty much the same thing on the Summit Hill side, only the Summit Hill side it has the curve in the road and some topography changes, so it's a much different feel. Central has some slope to it, does have some grade change, but it's not nearly like Summit Hill is. On the State Street side, that's where the vehicular access will be, which is appropriate in this case. Keep it off of Central and Summit. They do have a one-way in and then a one-way out, just kind of a circulation with the drop-off under the second story of the building. So it is a covered drop-off area that's beneath the building. The middle of the site, where we see the pass-through on the building, there are existing easements that the city and I assume KUB as well did not want to give up. I don't know who owns the easements, but if they don't want to give them up, so they have to work with them. The easements are staying. That's part of the reason why the access is still there. It is just a service drive. It is not something that will be used on a daily basis by just the general public. And they do intend to activate that space with a pop-up hub. If you go to the next one, yeah, that kind of just shows their general thought. Like underneath the building, they can use that space as like a pop-up, like they say, a pop-up hub. So they can put seating in there, whatever they need to do. But when the service vehicles need to come, they can just move them out of the way and then put them back down. So they do intend to try to use that space as best as possible, and we won't have too much traffic, hopefully especially during busy times, crossing that sidewalk on Central. All this information is in the packet, so I don't, and it's really hard to show it up on the screens. So here we're just talking about the materials. We've got starting on the top left, the cementitious panels in the it's the darker gray on the structure, so it's really, as being pointed out there, it's just more of an accent material. Next one down on the left is the Corten steel, and that's really at the canopy and entranceways. And then there's going to the next image is brick. And so the majority of the facade is as a brick material. Then the top right, again, it's another cementitious panel, which is what you see as the white on the facade. Now, again, it's more of an accent. Everything other than the brick would be considered an accent material here because the brick is the predominant material. Oops. Obviously, there'll be accent lighting, not surprising for a use like this hotel. They show where it's going to be. If you all have questions about it, feel free to ask the applicant. Probably one of the bigger light features would be the one above. I'm going to call it a mural, but the mural space on the corner of the building. Yeah, they have some downlights there. Otherwise, everything else is more just your typical accent lighting. Okay, so going to the build-to zone part of this, typically, if you can't meet the build-to zone, that's what goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And there's justifications as we provided and hardships and whatnot. The board, in this case, has the authority to approve a modification to those dimensional standards with the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. If the development has been conceived to respect the historic context of the block, provide greater pedestrian activity at the sidewalk level, and/or meet other provisions of the guidelines. So you have a lot of leeway with how you approach that. The first two parts are a little bit more specific. The second part is pretty broad because there's a lot of different guidelines. So the build-to zone, as I mentioned, it's an area that the building is supposed to be built up to. In this case, it's 0 to 5 feet. And there's also something called a build-to percentage. In this case, it's 80%. And that means that 80% of the building width facing that particular street has to be within that build-to zone. In this case, none of the building is in the build-to zone. For what they're requesting is the minimum needed to get 80% of their building facade in the build-to zone. So on Central, at 9.4 feet, they have 80% of their building facade in the build-to zone. And the same thing on Central, I think it was 8.5 feet. They have 80%, and then same thing on State Street is 32 feet. Again, so this just represents the hatching on Central and Summit side. It shows the 5-foot build-to zone. The build-to zone isn't shown on the State Street side, but it's the same thing, 5 feet. It's kind of hard to see on this plan, but there's a blue line, particularly on the Central Street side because it kind of follows the facade. There's a blue line that represents the proposed build-to line. It's pretty consistent with the front facade at 9.5 or pretty much 9.5 feet. On the Summit side, you can kind of see a blue line that kind of follows the radius of the road that cuts through the building. That's their proposed build-to zone there. There's not a line shown on, at least I didn't see one shown from State Street, but it's 32 feet back, and that gets the building in the build-to zone, according to that. So go to the next one. So Central Street modifications, going through the three criteria. The historic, respect the historic context of the block. It's kind of hard. I mean, this site I say historically, most recently had a building that did not meet the build-to zone. I mean, it was at an angle to the corner. Historically, it, wasn't that way. When Summit Hill Drive was constructed, that pretty much changed that whole part of downtown. This corner used to have a Wall, I think it was Wall Street, maybe, Wall Avenue. Vine. Yes, this used to be Vine. So Vine got cut off at Gay Street, and then Summit Hill kind of weaved its way up the hill and changed the way the rest of those buildings on that block face the street. But on Central Street, it's pretty consistent. All the buildings are built up to the back of the sidewalk, so it's kind of hard to say that the pushback meets that criteria. The next one is provide greater pedestrian activity at the sidewalk level. Again, it's a little bit challenging to say it meets that. The building is set back. There's a big landscape area. There's not plazas or courtyards or anything between the building and the street. And the entrances and the entrance is obviously at ground level, but you actually step up the main level. The lobby is actually above Central Street sidewalk grade. So the interaction there just really isn't the highest level. So I think it's hard to say it meets criteria B. Criteria C, in the guideline or in the staff report, all the relevant guidelines are listed. I mainly looked at the building location guidelines, which says, it's okay to set the building back 5 feet, particularly if you're building out more than half of a block and it's not in a historic area. And then also you should limit grade separation 3 feet up or down, to plazas and presumably the building itself or interior floor as well. Basically, I think for this one, I think it's hard to point to anything in particular, but there's obviously merit to what they're proposing. So I think the board just needs to discuss whether they feel comfortable with what's proposed and whether you feel that you can approve it.
Was there a staff recommendation?
Ultimately, staff is recommending approval of the request and the modifications with conditions. So,
Can you go to the screen that shows the staff recommendation and conditions, please? Okay. Can you give us your name and address, please?
There's a button on there with a person, if you'll press that first, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Hitesh Patel, principal with Elevate Architecture Studio that was involved in the design of this hotel. Our address is 1775 The Exchange, Southeast, Atlanta, Georgia, 30339.
Great. Thank you for being here. Do you have anything to add to Mike's comments?
I do. So in regards to some of the build-to zone requirements, one of the first things we saw as part of our site is we've actually got a 5-foot utility easement on all 3 sides of the site: State Street, South Central, and Summit Hill. And because of that, we didn't choose to, ask for or eliminate those because there are some existing utilities, some AT&T boxes. There's quite a few things at the corner of Summit Hill as well. And so our thought was to try to keep within 0 to 5 foot off of that on both Summit Hill and South Central, mostly because we also have, with this building being 7 stories, we've got concrete columns at the ground floor. We didn't want to impede within that or get too close to that easement either, not knowing everything that might be underneath those easements. In regards to the request for the 32 feet off State Street, as a hotel, we've got to figure out vehicular traffic and how to get that in and out of the hotel. Obviously, we didn't want any types of stacking cars along South Central or Summit Hill. So our goal has always been to have vehicular access approach the site from State Street. Due to the topography between State Street and South Central, pushing the building up and trying to get the car in and underneath the building was challenging. We actually have like a 10% slope coming off of off of State Street to get underneath the second floor of the hotel for the vehicular drop-off. So we've created a roundabout there to really help ease vehicular concerns, any kind of stacking issues that might happen along State and along South Central. The idea was that, valet would have the ability to double park the cars or stack the cars and kind of loop it around and bring it out. So that was really why we've requested the setbacks to be what they are, with some topographical challenges between State and South Central, and then being able to get the vehicular access that we need to have to provide for our guests.
Thank you for that. Can we talk about that just a little bit more with the roundabout? What's in the center of the roundabout? What's the design intent there?
Yeah, the design of that was we would have, and the rendering may show it a little bit more clear, but so we have some challenges there. One was we've already talked to KUB about transformer placements, access to it, and things like that. So we didn't want to have the transformer visible to the guest, pedestrian realm. So we've actually enclosed that with a CMU faced with brick that's going to match the hotel. And we thought at low level it could also be potentially a pedestrian vehicular entrance for the Moxie signage there at the ground floor. And between that, we would surround that with landscaping.
And then on the corner of the site at the northwest corner, what's going on there? That's a landscape bed?
That part's actually a service drive. So
Oh, that's the end of the service drive.
correct.
Okay.
So portion of that, they're going to be able to come in off State Street, make a right, and then that's going to help them loop back out.
Gotcha.
That part that's being circled right now is the guest experience, or the guest portion. Anything beyond that would only be for utilities, trash, service, and KUB access for our easement, and that's it.
And the little structure that we're seeing on there, that's fully enclosed? Is there going to be a gate on the backside of that faces State Street where the transformer is located?
Currently fully, the part that's facing State Street, that's a wall.
Okay.
Yeah, and then what's right next to that is actually an existing AT&T utility or communication box that we're putting. That's in the easement right now as well.
And
That's
is-
closer to the street.
So the north side of it's not going to be enclosed. That side will be open.
That's correct. I think that's per KUB, or we'd have to provide something for them to give them access to it. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And then what about pedestrian traffic along State Street there? Are there pavement changes or sidewalk indicated across there?
There is not currently a sidewalk indicated because of the way the site current with the existing utilities and things that are in that street. It's kind of difficult to get a sidewalk there with the grade differences of getting the vehicular traffic into the site.
Yeah, I talked to city engineering about a sidewalk on their frontage, and their determination was that they were not going to require one here. It was there's some challenges with like they mentioned, utilities, and at the far end of this block, that the building actually butts up against the road, so there's no sidewalk on this side all the way at Jackson Avenue. There is a continuous sidewalk on the opposite side of the road of State Street. But at this point, it was there was not going to be a requirement for a sidewalk.
I feel like if we're going to consider a 32-foot build-to zone and we're making the whole site more urban, that some kind of way to walk down the street on that side of the street needs to be considered, even if it's not a full City of Knoxville standard sidewalk. I feel like people are going to need to be able to walk around that edge.
Was when guests arrive at the hotel, their primary entrance, they'd be in a vehicle at the guest drop-off, entering the hotel at that side. And then once they're leaving, they could utilize either most people would probably come off of South Central or potentially Summit Hill, mostly because we are a little bit elevated, but we feel like that bar, having that decorative bar and all the things that are going activity at that corner concentrated South Central and Summit Hill is what's going to drive the customers in from that corner versus pedestrians coming around the corner from State Street.
I think that's true for guests, but I'm just thinking about pedestrians as a whole for the city and wanting to cut through to the other side of the old city through State Street because it's going to be a lot more hospitable now because there's a big, pretty new building there. So I think just thinking ahead for people who are going to want to use that streetscape, it's important for us to think about that.
How much will your design change if you don't get BZA approval?
In terms, just to get the setbacks, it would have to be pretty significant because I'm not sure how to get the vehicular traffic to come in. Trying to get the building close enough to State Street and be able to pull vehicles off in a safe manner so you're not blocking State Street, I think that's going to be the challenge because of the topography.
And when are you supposed to see BZA?
So BZA would be for the, we didn't really touch on this, but the State Street or Summit Hill Drive elevation has to have a pedestrian entrance every 50 feet. They have one pedestrian entrance and it's 54 plus feet to the Central Street corner, and then to the opposite side it's 56 feet, so they don't meet that standard. If the design review board approves the increase in the build-to zone, then they don't have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a build-to zone increase. The design review board can handle that.
So there's not a chance that they would have to come back with a modified design different from what we're going to see tonight?
If the board approves the build-to zones, then no.
Okay.
It's the doorway would be, the number of doors on Summit Hill Drive could potentially require it coming back to the board.
Okay, because we had a case last month where we didn't hear it because it had to go to BZA first, but it's not the same situation.
I think that's up to the board if they want to approve it with condition that BZA approves or they get the BZA variance, then they can do that. If you prefer that they seek that first and then come back to the board, that's your prerogative.
Okay, thank you.
I had one, I don't know if it's an idea, but what if there's a pedestrian crosswalk there on the street? So if you leave the hotel, there's a, pedestrian place and you can go to the sidewalk across
Yeah, I
from the
think
hotel.
to get to the other side where there is a sidewalk.
Where there is a sidewalk.
Yeah, I think that is probably a good compromise there. I mean, at the end of where that sidewalk on Summit Hill crosses, there just needs to be continuity there so the pedestrian knows how to get onto State Street and have a safe path to the other side.
Yeah, and that sidewalk there, from what I recall, is kind of weird anyway up on Summit Hill. So it's like it was like part dirt when you're going up Summit Hill. So I don't know how that sidewalk connects.
I don't think it does.
No.
I also think too, if you're thinking from if I'm a guest in this hotel and I'm leaving to go, I don't know, say to Gay Street, I would exit out the side of the building where the cars are coming in. And right now there's not anywhere to walk other than in that roadway on that side to get to a sidewalk from that exit.
Right.
So, I would agree with Suzanne in the sense of some sort of sidewalk, even if it was just on the corner in the bottom left of the screen, that connected to that sidewalk.
Across the street. That's off page right now.
You're right,
Yes. Yeah.
I agree, and also just thinking about out-of-town guests, it can be disorienting to use any entrance besides the one where you checked in. So it wouldn't be surprising if people would just keep coming and going from that door, not knowing there are more convenient access points to the old city. And Summit Hill is just a very fast road that is not pedestrian friendly.
Right. And I think the other thing I'm thinking about is just all the people that come off of Gay Street, either to get to the 100 block or to get to the old city, and not necessarily guests of this place, but just people generally coming and going from downtown will see a big, nice new place that they want to go check out and then find themselves at the corner of the old city and want to get back there. And it's traditionally, State Street is like a pretty unwelcoming situation right now. It's dark and there's not good sidewalks and that kind of thing. And we're going to have a nice new thing that's going to bring attention to that intersection of State Street and Summit Hill. And I think that there needs to be consideration to make it safer and more hospitable.
On the point of the variance on this side of the building, is there the map? So if I'm leaving that exit right underneath the Moxie sign, if I'm coming out, I'm having to go left and then around a wall to go back up Summit Hill. So there's not even a way out of that entrance to go right without first having to go left, if that makes sense.
Is that correct?
Because of the grade, because we're catching more grade to go up the opposite way.
Yes, okay.
Because I think there were stairs there previously when Merchants of Beer was there that went up that direction. I can't remember.
It was just lower.
I can't remember. I don't think, now that you said that, I don't think there was either. Maybe in a dream. But I think that's something to take into consideration when we think about both the sidewalk on that left, on the State Street side, and then also the variance, because if you're having to, you're basically exiting to go to Central. There's really not a clear, to go towards Gay Street up Summit Hill, in my opinion.
In a way, I think that's okay because Summit Hill is so fast. It's kind of nice to have that layering where there's a wall and it works with your grade to go out toward Central and around. That doesn't bother me as much as somebody finding themselves at the corner of Summit Hill and State Street, and the Summit Hill facade is beautiful and great and welcoming and new, and then there's this weird dark alley that's going down toward the old city that I feel like needs to be addressed some way.
The state has always kind of felt like an alley in that stretch. And you do have your sidewalk down the other side, but it's pretty much, it looks very much like a service entrance. But I agree with some of the earlier discussion about if the Summit Hill sidewalk could come around the corner and connect to the client service driveway, so that you make that circle. And that seems, looking at the pictures, like it may not be as complicated with the utilities because you're still a distance from that AT&T box on the other side there, that one. And so you could make that loop around and strengthen the connection to the sidewalk on the other side of State. A lot of the making State Street more appealing is beyond the scope of this site. But if we get you further into it, that might help.
Yeah, I think it's just about setting the street up for success later, because that parking lot won't be a weird old parking lot forever, the next site over. And if there's a little nub of sidewalk or at least pedestrian access that gets us into State Street, then other things can connect to it later.
Yeah, and I think the board only has so much authority to require pedestrian connections. Some of this is not like, so for instance, if we brought a sidewalk around and connected to the first driveway, for instance, the first driveway has a 10% grade that goes down, so it's a pretty steep slope. It's not accessible for just anybody to use. I think there's challenges that we can't resolve. I think long-term, State Street probably needs to be reimagined. It's a pretty short road. It's mainly been more service-oriented to businesses, even through historic aerials. There really hasn't been many buildings that fronted State Street, at least on this block. You could almost, I'm not going to put anything in this might happen in the future or not, but you can almost imagine this being one of those streets that it's car and pedestrian use. It's a mixed space for both almost. You can almost see that with this kind of a block. So we don't know what's ultimately going to happen with State Street, whether a sidewalk on both sides of the street is really the answer or if it's some other design that might work better ultimately. So I think it's going to be a bit tough for us to get too deep into the weeds on pedestrian connections off of State Street. I think if you have more concerns with pedestrian connections to Summit Hill or to Central, I'd probably be more in line with the guidelines. I mean, State Street is is a frontage, so we have to be mindful of that, but it is a much different road frontage than Summit Hill and Central.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think Lisa's comment about just having a clear idea of where you cross and how to get to the sidewalk that does exist is a good way to compromise on how to solve that corner.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, there's not even an indication that there's a crossing there. Like there's not lines on the road to show. Yeah, it's literally just a road. So I think that, I don't know if that falls within the city or not, but I think that would be helpful.
I agree.
The other thing to consider, and it's related to the variance application, is that you could make a pedestrian connection from that vehicle entrance to the lobby down straight to Summit Hill, which would give you a second entrance on Summit Hill. It looks like maybe it's dumpsters right now or something. There's some dashed boxes.
No, those are actually bicycle locations, I guess.
So like through there
By
could be
parking.
like a path, you know?
Straight
Which maybe
to
wouldn't be
Summit.
an entrance to the building, but it could be a way to get people
It would.
clearly
It wouldn't be
into
an
Summit.
accessible entrance because it would require steps, but potentially, yeah, we could look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Sarah, that's a good idea, because if you look at something like the project on the corner of Summit Hill and Gay that's going up right now, there's a lot of stairs with even that project connecting people to the interior of that building. So to me, that would be a good compromise to get people to Summit Hill from that side of the building. Yeah.
Okay.
And-
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I guess just in regards to the entrances, I've talked to Mike about applying for a variance on the distance, only because of the topography of the site. We're about 4 feet lower from one side to the other. We've tried to absorb if you want to go back to the ground floor plan, if you could. So you enter in on grade at the vehicular entrance side, you walk through, and actually what's really cool about the Moxie brand, it's a little bit more of a lifestyle brand, and you don't have a check-in. Your check-in is actually at the bar. And so creates all that activity at the corner of South Central and Summit. And then we have a set of internal steps that are going down to the South Central entrance there, right there, yeah, internally.
Yeah, I do like how the building activates the street all the way around, and I don't have a real issue with the 2-foot rise of that corner there. I noticed the guidelines said not to be over 3 feet, so if we're at 2'4", yeah, that's inside the guidelines, and makes it more visible to the pedestrian in a way than if it was at grade. One of the big issues here seems to be the Bill 2 line. And one of the things I've observed when I first pulled it up is how constrained the site is by easements. They're all over the place and run around Summit and Central, and then you've got the stormwater easement right smack through the middle of the building. So you've had some challenges to deal with. So I don't have an issue with it being a little further back. It gives more breathing room to the sidewalk. There, it's not as traditional as being dead up against the brick wall when you get further down Central, but it's this corner is so opened up by the scale of Summit Hill already. I think it serves a good sort of transitional setback to go along there. So that aspect, looking at the various things we're trying to resolve here, that I don't have any real issue with. The notion of pedestrian access to the vehicular entry, we've looked at that one pretty hard there, and there may be an option to come through the bicycle route that gives us a thing that solves the excessive slope. I mean, your maximum slope on a sidewalk with handrails is 8.2% or something like that. So 10% would not really meet the guidelines or criteria for pedestrian entrance. So if you came through the bicycle route, and that would help address your get another door on Central problem. So that might be a solution to that until State Street gets a makeover.
Yeah, I don't have any problem at all with the Summit Hill side or the Central side. I think it looks great. And I understand your reasoning by you're doing the build to from the easement instead of from the line. And that makes sense to me. Because who wants to deal with whatever you might find under there, which is probably a lot. So all of that makes perfect sense. I think because the 32 feet is so big and it is on a public way and we are supposed to be stewards of the pedestrian experience, I think that's why we're talking about that. And we just want to make sure that it's serving your needs, but also in the best interest of the public who's going to be walking in that corner.
Yeah, I can understand the concern. I think the idea with the stairs may be a good compromise to get up to Summit from the bike, because that is supposed to be, we're thinking about where to utilize, those bike racks and things like that. And potentially ownership's already mentioned as well that we may have bikes that are going to be available for hotel guests as well, right? So it may be a good way to kind of get off of Summit there and get into the hotel entrance directly from what would probably be viewed as a main entrance until they're kind of explored the hotel, like you've mentioned.
Sure, yeah.
In the street view, it looks like there's a utility line on the corner. Is that going to be on the corner of Summit and South Central? I don't know if there's a render. Yeah, right there.
That big pole.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
we're
assuming
having-
that'll be moved.
No.
No?
That's why we're also trying to avoid keeping
Okay.
Yeah.
On a different note, though, I do have a question about the windows. So on the renderings, it shows, if we look at the side that's on South Central, in the renderings, that one, I think, yes. So if in kind of the center, there's that darker gray strip that's over to the right.
Yeah.
That strip. So in the rendering, it shows that with muntings, and then on the elevation, it shows it without. Which is that going to be?
It should be the same window type that's with the guest rooms with the dividers. So our intent was, even though I guess when we view this project as a whole, we actually fall in the DKG district and not the DKW, but our design aesthetic followed more the DKW because we're sitting next to the old city. So we're thinking more of the larger windows with the dividers that's shown in the rendering there.
Because I liked the dividers because I think it connects to the history of the neighborhood best.
Yeah.
With regard to the build to line, I was trying to think of if there's a happy medium. On the Central Street side, like Mike mentioned, is the more important. It's the street that actually has context to work with. And I'm wondering if the portion of the building to the right or to the north of that part, if you explored maybe just pushing that up to the build to line and everything else kind of being where it is. It's not a particularly fancy historic corner, so it seems like it would be more important to align with the historic structures there than anywhere else. Have you looked into that at all?
We did, and it partly was because we know our foundations are going to be pretty big, and so then trying to get those columns closer to South Central is going to, how's that going to impede the easements, and what are we going to, and how big those column foundations could be, because we're supporting a concrete podium slab with 6 levels of metal framing. The other part of it that, we kind of evaluated was we've added a bunch of wall packs and cameras to that alleyway, because we know currently it is being used as a building entrance for the neighbors. And from what I understand from our ownership team, it's currently on a photo cell. So we're actually putting more kind of security cameras and lighting, because we know we're creating an alley, and thought maybe offsetting that a little bit, corner kind of gives you that visibility into that alley before you get into that alley, if that makes sense, for security. So kind of stepping it away from the adjacent building helps with a little bit of that visibility cue as well for any of the guests that are going to be or residences that are going to be entering that alley to access their residences.
So that will be a pass-through alley. There's no sort of gate or anything there.
It's right now, I believe it's a pass-through alley. I'll have to check and see if I think she has a gate on the other side of it because there are some concerns about homeless activity being within that area. So I believe there's a gate that's separating our site from the parking lot side, but not necessarily from the front. I don't believe there is there one. There's both sides. Sorry, I stand corrected. There's one on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So will that stay gated like that?
Yes.
I'm assuming, yeah.
So just to be clear, there's not, the sidewalk along South Central is going to be continuous. There's no jog. It's just that
Correct.
you have more space between the sidewalk and your building, which is
Yes.
landscape.
That's correct.
And then can you speak to the, if you pull up the hero shot rendering, I just want to talk about the main corner. At the top of the building where you have the two masses, you have one where it's kind of angled and the other is flat. I'm just curious why you didn't stick to one or the other.
We're trying to provide highlight that corner. There's going to be a lounge access up there that's available for public and guest use, and I guess we're trying to create a way to activate that corner a little bit more. So it was just a design decision, and then we're probably going to have a little bit of lighting there that kind of highlights that edge as well.
I like how you're highlighting the corner. I guess I would prefer you to stick to one form or the other, make it one cohesive form rather than making the form on the very top slightly different. Otherwise, I would say remove the portion that's below the top floor and just let that kind of be its own little special corner at the top. There's just a lot of different forms kind of coming together, and I just it makes me feel like I want to simplify it in some way. So there's not so many things happening. The other thing is why I asked about moving to aligning the State Street facade. Just on that portion, it seems like a very flat facade to me. I know that you have the dark vertical, but if you were to pull that brick mass forward even a little bit, I think it would go a long way. It would also expand your roof deck slightly, which might be a positive.
While we're talking about the corner, I think this was mentioned in the workshop, but what's the idea behind the art there?
I'm kind of glad you brought that up. So it is actually a placeholder. It's not representing anything right now. We've actually already been in contact with, we actually recently spoke with Emily Curran and Sherry Jenkins with Dogwoods Arts, and she has put us in touch with a couple of different muralists that are going to help us potentially help create something. The goal of that is going to be a mural that helps to kind of signify the old city in a unique way that's representative of the Moxie brand as well. So a couple of people that we're planning on reaching out to, and I think everybody probably knows, like Megan Lingerfield, Curtis Clover, and I think there was one more individual that Emily and Sherry were going to introduce us to. So that's kind of a work in progress. It's not representative of anything that's going to be there currently. Our goal is to have a mural that's going to be representative of the old city.
Great. As somebody who's been on the board for a long time, we have over the years said many, many, many times that we want something that is representative of Knoxville and that feels like it's at home here and is not generic. And so that move is very appreciated.
Yeah, we're excited actually. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah. Okay, we've done a lot of discussion. I think it's time to review the conditions and recommendations from the staff. And unless we have other big questions, think about our conditions and a motion.
The only thing I will say, it looks like our applicant did bring samples, I think.
I did, in case there's any questions about materials or anything like that. We did bring some.
Did we want to?
And Cameron's not here.
And Cameron's not here. Did we want to look at those or no?
I think it would be great to see which fiber cement or composite material you're using.
Sure.
Just because they vary so much and it's a hot topic on the board. So
Should I start this side? Just pass around?
yeah, just pass it around would be great.
The question that came from Dwayne is, what color are those bricks really?
Yeah.
That's the white. This is the darker gray. Here's the brick, and here's the. We are actually a shared image. This is being used for a hotel. Full brick. It's a full brick. Yes, it's not a thin brick. And it's got kind of an undertone on it. So it gives it kind of increase that warehousey look.
Can I just ask one more question about the back entrance on State Street? The windows on that, where the car park goes, they seem like it's kind of smaller to me. Have you thought about making them bigger? And they don't have the mullions, so they're just, have you considered that?
We did. They're actually that's highlighting the corridors in the guest rooms. So at the end of the guest room corridor, so they can only be a certain width because the corridor is about 5 feet wide. And then putting additional windows on that facade was going to be there's a lot of furniture that's going to happen with the Moxie scheme, and having to get headboard walls and things on a glass wall is going to be a little difficult in terms of the FF&E.
Last comment I have too, that part on this view specifically, at the very top floor, I think it's the gym that's at the top of that vertical element or carve out. Is it possible to keep the vertical continuous, or what was the thinking behind that? Is that essential for the gym space?
Yeah, we're trying to maximize the square footage that we could get for the gym.
Sure.
And then there's a little bit of brand standard stuff that we're dealing with on that too. So
Okay.
We're just trying to maximize square footage allowance for guest amenities.
What's going on inside that carve out? Is it, I know there's windows, and then what's the material?
It would be the material that's the brick's going to return in, essentially. It'll come around the corner.
It's on A201.
And then the back is the black.
That's correct.
What is the, like with the overhangs kind of underneath? I know on the rooftop bar, I believe it's a wood on the very.
So we're going to turn the fiber, sorry, I'm trying to look at the, yeah, no, you're fine. Going to turn that fiber cement panel in at the rooftop bar, and then it'll be an inlay with some kind of decorative material that we're figuring in. But the perimeter soffit's going to the perimeter of that bar is going to match the same as the front face, that white face.
And then the material underneath the bar outside area, is that what you're referring? Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm tracking.
That's correct. Yeah, the perimeter portion of that. And I think we have a drawing of that on a separate page. We provided some reflected ceiling plans.
Here.
I see.
It's got like tell me if I'm correct in how I'm interpreting this, but you're going to have like a band of fiber cement, and then you're going to have like a more artistic lighting or
That's
type kind of
correct.
thing in the middle. And then the other rooftop or ceiling condition, exterior ceiling condition, is in that carve out that Tony was talking about. The strip that goes up and it has a lid on it that is the gym. Is that going to have the same kind of roof or ceiling?
So that's for the rooftop amenity. In terms of the fitness room, it's not a very deep overhang. I mean, it does hang over
It's just a
little
lid.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What about the on South Central, the kind of the
Pop-up hub?
Pop-up hub.
Yeah, we've got I believe we put you may have passed it. Right. No. Right there. So the material is I think the material is gonna come down and around in similar kind of transition where we bump it up and put in some decorative or horizontal linear lights in there. We've got some limited ceiling heights with the thing, so we're a little tight on ceiling height there with the easement.
Yeah, thank you. There's been a couple projects that we've seen that have just had no finishing underneath, so I always like to ask that question.
Sure. And then similar for the drive entry as well. We're kind of treating that as a special moment too, especially since it's the vehicular entrance.
Are we ready for a motion?
I'll be bold. And he's answered that. I came here with several questions. I've had them answered. One was about that pop-up space and curb cut. I generally resist adding any additional curb cuts to sidewalks, even though there was a curb cut in the sidewalk right there up until 2024 or 2020. And so it's only been gone for 5-6 years. But that it's not in regular use, that sort of answered my question. The notion of activating the space with tables and activity, I think will really bring some connection through that space. And then seeing the brick, I like that much better than they appear on the rendering.
Yeah, it reads better in person.
So that's kind of resolved the main things. So I would move to approve. I would go, the staff recommendations were more questions for us than recommendations, but the set ones right here, I believe we will, or support, I would support in my motion that these 4 recommendations right here be part of the motion. And the other thing that we seem to agree on is trying to get a connection to Summit Hill through the bicycle area. If that could be explored, maybe reviewed by staff, that we add that condition.
Sure. We can definitely look at that.
Are you all okay with that motion?
So they're willing to allow staff to approve the bicycle access thing?
Is that correct, Perry?
Yeah, it could be stated much simpler than I just rambled.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve based on staff recommendation, adding the condition that there will be a connection through the bicycle area, which can be reviewed and approved by staff. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. Thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
bringing the materials too. That's great. Okay, next up, I need my cheat sheet. Hold on.
706.
Oh, thank you. Next up, we're going to do 706 Walnut Street, which is 1D26DT.
In November last year, the board approved 3 wall signs and a projecting sign for this project, subject to additional review for the details and internal illumination and electrical wiring by staff. The board denied a projecting sign at the corner of Walnut Street and West Church Avenue, where an existing projecting sign for Yasin's Falafel House is located. There is another projecting sign for Yasin's on the 3rd column along Walnut Street that you can see on the street view. The applicant now proposes relocating the existing Yasin signs to the 2nd column on each side of the intersection and installing the projecting sign that was previously denied. The size and the location of the sign are the same as the last application. The 4, if you could go back to the previous slide, the 4 signs at the bottom right corner were approved previously are not within the purview of this application. I've just added it in here to see what were approved before. Here you can see the details of the sign, which are essentially the same from last time. The applicant has provided additional details about the illumination and how it would be mounted. projecting signs are included in the design guidelines as one of the recommended sign type. However, the guideline recommends a maximum size of 9 square feet. The previously approved 31.21 square feet projecting sign on the right of Walnut Street elevation, which was denoted as sign number 5 on the previous slide, will be mounted 33 feet above the ground level, so it will appear much smaller from the pedestrian level. The proposed 12 square feet sign will be installed approximately 10 feet 3 inch above the ground level. The size of the sign should be reduced to 9 square feet to be consistent with the guidelines. The existing EASIN signs are also 9 square feet in size. The proposed new location for the EASIN sign on the West Church Avenue is in close proximity to a stop sign and poses a safety concern according to city engineering. The proposed relocation of the EASIN sign on the Walnut Street needs to be further reviewed by engineering to determine if it poses a safety concern. It will be very close to an existing city wayfinding sign, and the relocation may obscure the wayfinding sign. It is staff's opinion that the existing EASIN sign on Walnut Street should remain in its current location. So we recommend approval of Certificate 1D 26DT subject to 3 conditions: reducing the size of the projecting sign to a maximum of 9 square feet and submitting revised plans for review and approval by planning staff; 2, relocating the EASIN sign from the first column to the third column along West Church Avenue at the same height it is currently installed, and revised plans with the final location shall be submitted for review and approval by planning staff; and 3, keeping the EASIN sign on Walnut Street in its existing location. Since we posted the staff recommendation, the applicant has provided revised drawings, which, if you go to the next slide, which keeps the EASIN sign in the location staff has recommended and reducing the sign size to 8.92 square feet. If the board finds this alternative appropriate, then staff recommends approval. Next slide, please. Staff recommends approval of this certificate subject to one condition, that the submission of internal illumination and mounting method for review and approval by planning staff. So I guess if you find the updated plan appropriate, you can make the motion of the alternative recommendation.
Great, thank you, Samuel. Is the applicant present? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm present. Irina Stevens, representing Colite.
Can you give us your address, please?
For Colite, it is 5 Technology Park in Columbia, South Carolina, 29229.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to add to Samuel's comments?
Just that we have provided the drawings for a little bit of a bigger sign. So it will be just the reduction in size with a reduced sign size. The illumination and mounting method will be the same as the drawings that were provided for a little bit bigger when it was at 12 square feet.
Okay, thank you. We'll open it up for discussion and a motion.
Samuel, can you explain again why staff's recommending the EASIN sign be remained on the third column?
So on Walnut Street, engineering department said that they need to review it further if the second column can be approved, to make sure that it does not pose a safety concern with the stop sign that is there. So they said it's a maybe location and they need to look into the further. But if they move it to the second column, it will be closer to the city wayfinding sign, and it may obscure the view if you're coming from the other side. So we think that it's best to keep it on its current location. It would also be symmetric from both sides of the intersection.
Thank you. I would say I agree with staff's recommendation on that. I didn't see the city's wayfinding sign at first. I don't know if there's any other discussion, but I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve per staff recommendation, if not.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
To clarify, it would be the alternative recommendation, right? Or are we approving?
Yes, alternate. But yeah, I move to approve the alternate side per staff recommendation.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the alternate design. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that one passes. Thank you. Last up, we have 133 South Gay Street, which is case 1F26DT.
Okay, this is a new sign and awning canopy for Jack's on 100 block of K Street. You can see that, well, the sign is neon illuminated, and the awning also has neon lettering and neon banding on it. If you go to the next slide, if you look through the packet, you know that the whole basis of this request is trying to recreate what was on the building many years ago. So this is their best approximation or similar approximation to what that sign was, is what they're proposing. So, so the sign itself is approximately 23.8 square feet. I might be a little bit off there, but it's in that realm. The guidelines recommend 9 square foot projecting signs. Obviously, this is a bit of a unique situation where they're trying to recreate a historic, or at least a sign that was here previously. There is something actually called like designated historic signs, which this would not be. Just make that clear. But it is an attempt to recreate an old sign and awning for this particular site. So ultimately, you'll see the staff recommendation is to reduce the size of the sign to 9 square feet. I think that the board should just discuss like the proposal, whether they think it's appropriate. The board can approve it if they think it is appropriate, or some scaled version of this sign as well. So typically with larger signs, we want them a little bit higher on the building, and then the lower the sign is, the more we want it at that 9 square feet or close to it. If you go to the next slide, I think, yeah. Here's 2 other signs on the same block, just for reference. It's no longer the Harvest Restaurant, but the new restaurant there, but this is what it was when it was approved. So that's about 14.5 square feet. It's more vertical, and it's very close to the building. So the very bottom of that sign is 3 feet wide. So you kind of see the mass of that sign is pretty close to the building. It's hugging the building. It's probably 2.5, 3 feet, max, probably closer to 2 feet off the building versus the one that's proposed. The maximum distance off the building is closer to 5'7", 5'8", 9", something like that. So it does extend quite a bit further from the building, so it would be much more impactful in the streets, in the streetscape. Not to mention the neon illumination as well. It's a little bit brighter typically. The old Herald sign, so on the opposite side of this building, to the right of this building, there is a large projecting sign with a acrylic face. When that structure was rehabbed, they basically reused the existing sign. So that's how that sign is there and how it got approved the way it is. And that's a little bit larger, so that's 32.5 square feet, just kind of give you an idea. And it does, I think that's 8 feet long, I guess. So it extends pretty far off the building. It's not, it doesn't hug the building, and it doesn't go vertical like we probably would prefer. This is just some of the more details of what the proposal is. It's a metal awning, has 3 connection rods back to the building that connect to the brick facade. The vertical sign element connects to both the awning and then also has a connection point towards the top at the building. The awning has an 8'10" clearance with the sidewalk. I talked to the applicant earlier today. 8'10" is at the low end, so it gets taller. That's kind of a question in the staff report. I wasn't sure which way it went. So they will need to raise that 2 inches to meet the minimum 9-foot clearance for the zoning standard, but it does not appear that it would have to be higher. I was kind of hoping that was the case, but I didn't know for sure. So it does cover a little bit more of the transom, but not too much. I don't think it would be very noticeable. Go to the next. So another part of the staff recommendation is to remove the neon banding. So the zoning ordinance prohibits neon and LED lighting that outlines doors, windows, architectural features, and building facades, and I think that would apply here, or at least the intent would apply here too. Even if it did not apply, I think it's a little bit much still for this type of a building to have that much illumination, particularly when it's not directly associated with the sign. I think staff recommendation is to remove the banding. The lettering is okay to stay. It's considered signage. So I pretty much went over this through the discussion, but the recommendation is to approve this with the three conditions, revising the projection sign to a maximum of 9 square feet with revisions reviewed by planning staff. The elements of the sign should be scaled similar based on the proposed sign, increasing the awning's sidewalk clearance to 9 feet, and removing the neon lighting around the edge of the awning with the neon lettering can remain.
Okay, thank you. Can we have your name and address, please?
Yes, Logan Higgins, 133 South Gay Street. So as far as the staff recommendation, we're completely okay with the 9-foot clearance. That is, the 8'10" is on the shorter side, and so it'll be very easy to get 9 feet just by raising it a little bit. And then we're also okay with removing the light band around the awning itself. That was just a reference again to the historic sign and awning that was there. It appears to have had some neon banding and other details with it. So but we're okay with removing that. However, with the size of the sign, the intention behind this was to kind of recreate what was there historically. And it is a big sign for sure. But in the context of the other buildings nearby, a lot of them have projecting awnings that are sloped. And I really think that a 9 square foot, we mocked it up, and if we shrink this down to 9 square feet, it would, if you're looking at this, what we've got proposed right now, it would come about to the bottom F of the word coffee. And so it's much smaller in scale with other signage and with the other awnings in the block. And so between that and the density of the trees that are on the street, I think that it would not be very noticeable really if it were that size. So we would certainly prefer to keep it the proposed side, but certainly happy to hear any other thoughts.
Thank you. I just want to say, I think the 9 square feet is a good standard that we have that is mostly intended for like a small blade sign and, projecting sign out from the wall in an urban area. And a lot of times that looks great. But if it's a sign that's more artistic in nature or historic in nature, I think it looks kind of silly for 9 square feet to be attached to with that design. This is very chaotic, sorry. And I think a couple of years ago, we looked at a sign that's on the Holston building, and I can't remember what that place is called right now. Vita, yeah. And I kind of had a similar comment where if you're going to do something artistic and interesting, then it might take a little bit more size to make that happen in a way that looks well proportioned. So that's my little soapbox about that. We'll open it up for
I
discussion.
think that you get most of the additional square footage in the width of the sign itself, and it's not concentrated. It's not like it's 25 square feet in one concentrated area.
Right.
You have to have that width to be able to do that. And, you know, for those that like symmetry, the vertical lettering is the same width as the horizontal lettering.
I would agree. I think that even some of the points Logan made as far as the awnings on that street go, I mean, if you look at what was previously Harvest, I mean, those are massive awnings, and that to me doesn't add architecturally to the neighborhood. I think this is something that's interesting, and I love the nod at the historical factor of it. I think that I don't know. I really like it.
Could you, if you eliminate the neon band at the bottom, could you at least maybe take it and outline what they've done, similar to what they've done there with your text on the front of the awning?
Do you make like paint lines to kind of match that?
Well, no, is that neon?
Yeah, I believe so.
Put some more neon up there.
It's just boxed in instead of
Yeah.
going the full length of the canopy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just mimic that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could do that. Absolutely.
One question, Logan, is the bracket still on the building from the Mitchell sign? Can you see where it had been previously attached?
No. Well, there's no bracket. There are quite a few holes.
So the general area it was
yeah.
to give you some idea that this is the scale of the original,
Right,
is sort of
yeah.
what I'm driving at is, do we have markers from bolt holes or whatever that
Yeah.
would support the size?
Yeah. And also with this, we were, the images, it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but we're able to see if you get in and raise the contrast and everything, you can kind of see some of the windows where they are and use that as a scale as well on this image.
Is the underside of the canopy black as designed?
We, for the bottom of the canopy, we haven't decided on that because it kind of, I think, is going to come down to what material is affordable to do with that. Because like in that image, it looked like they had this like
Mirror or
nice,
something.
yeah, reflective of some sort that was really cool. But I don't know if we'll be able to do that.
What's above the location? Is it residential?
Yes, yeah. It's a single unit that covers the entire building.
Are they okay with the sign being right there?
Yeah, it's the building owner's unit, and so, yeah.
Any issue with that tree there, Logan?
Apart from the buckets of leaves that blow in under the door, no, I think it's far enough away.
I'm curious where, this is just me being curious, where did you find these? Do you know? Or, I mean, I'm sure you know, but.
I will occasionally, instead of doing what I'm supposed to be doing work-wise, will go to the newspaper archives and search specific addresses or something through the decades. And a few years ago, came across this doing that and was just kind of I thought it was the coolest thing. So we've had it saved and just kind of on the list for when we could get around to it.
Because I searched the McClung archive and wasn't able to find anything, so I was curious where you found it. Yeah, the newspaper.
The newspaper one, yeah.
It's probably Knox News Sentinel archives, which are available for free to all residents in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Good plug.
Well, I would entertain, or I would make a motion to approve with striking the 9 square feet revisions. I like, Rick, I think you mentioned kind of keeping some of the neon on the front side. Is there anything specific with that?
Box in horizontal text.
Okay, yeah, so boxing in the text on the front for, yeah. Anything else that I'm missing that we discussed?
Do we need to make anything clear about the underside, the soffit, to come back for staff?
That's a good point. I don't know, what is everybody feeling about that?
It's shown as black, so I think that we should approve it as black.
Black, yeah, I would agree.
Agreed.
Okay, so a motion to approve with the underside being black and the front kind of outline text in the neon. Anything else? Yeah, removing number 1 on the staff recommendation.
Okay.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. And that's the end of our agenda. Welcome again, Lisa. Thank you for coming. And we will see you all next time. Good night.